when the wind's blowing just right, we just cannot hardly breathe. And we have to open everything up and let it blow on through the house. It is awful.
The main tragedy in this is the health of the children.
When we were not living in Midlothian, he had no trouble at all. But the minute we come back, he has it.
There's lots of smoke over there, about dirty smoke and stuff coming out them things that are like that.
I have 4 children. All 4 of them have asthma. I think it's what's in the air here.
It's very concerning, you know, to me as a physician and as a member of the community.
I believe it poses a hazard, especially when you have so many in such a small area.
Well, my husband and I moved here in 1969, and in fact, it was Thanksgiving Day. Along about 1986, I think it was, while we began having health problems and upper respiratory infections, and it would go into our ears and our eyes would run and our throats would get sore, and we couldn't understand it, what was going on. And then we found out a little bit later on, although there'd never been a public meeting, that they were burning hazardous waste over here at TXI.
Midlothian was known as the cement capital of Texas, primarily because of the limestone deposits that are all along the Balcones Fault. What you see behind us right now are the limestone quarries that the plants use, in this case TXI uses, to get its original rock from.
Hazardous waste always flows downhill to the least regulated solution, and the least regulated solution is typically the one that causes the most environmental problems. In order to meet the time constraints and the requirements of Congress in removing hazardous waste from ground disposal, from land disposal, and being unable to permit hazardous waste incinerators fast enough, the agency simply made the decision that they wouldn't bother permitting incinerators. They'd use cement kilns and put a little loophole in the law. Actually, there's several loopholes.
My granddaughter that lives next door and a little friend was out here swimming, and they had an accident over there of some sorts. And the smoke came in here so heavily that the children couldn't get their breath. As a matter of fact, I thought I was going to have to give them artificial respiration in order to get their breath. I called the air control people. They sent a person out here, and they said that they had an accident, that happens once in a while. And it got to where that they had enough accidents that we just shut it down.
The problem at Midlothian is that they are burning hazardous, toxic chemicals for their fuel value. And they are a cement kiln, they are not an incinerator, and so they have a very inefficient burn, which leaves a lot of the dangerous molecules intact.
You don't have to be sophisticated. You can just lay out the proposition to objective people and say, do you or do you not think there is something fundamentally wrong where everyone has to deal with a particular product, hazardous wastes, in a way that will ensure that there is no environmental harm except for one group, one industry, one company, or whatever. And the immediate natural response is, well, how does that happen? How do you have someone that doesn't adhere to the law and that it's legal to not be adhering to the law? Well, that's what we're all about here today. And this, by the way, is going on across the nation. Today we happen to be in Texas, but the same problem exists in Pennsylvania, exists in Michigan and other states around the nation.
I don't feel like the burden of proof should be on the public to prove that it's harmful. I think the burden of proof should be on the plants, whatever industry, anywhere. We're not just concerned about our own backyard, but I think the burden of proof ought to be on the industry to prove conclusively that what they're doing is not harmful to the public. I think this is a David and Goliath situation. These people have covered all their bases regarding politicians and banks, just local citizens everywhere, universities. And it's hard to fight something like that.
But one of the cement factories say they are not to blame. They say their unique process of burning hazardous waste at extremely high temperatures for fuel benefits the environment by effectively destroying the dangerous materials.
The intense heat that we have to process through is the ideal facility to handle these types of materials.
And because they received new permits, the plant says they will increase the amount of waste they will burn.
Burning of hazardous waste in a cement kiln produces millions of pounds of air pollution from these plants in Midlothian, and much of this air pollution is harmful. This is not recycling. This is a very harmful process that's being carried out.
I feel it's quite concerning. I've seen year after year what seems to be more of a resurgence of people's asthma, where it has been quiescent before that, more in the way of sinus difficulties, infections, and allergy type problems that are sometimes hard to characterize, and more frequent visits to their doctors. And so it's very concerning to me as to what might be going on environmentally. Personally, I've lived since 1984 very close to the plants, and I've recently sold my home, married with a child, and I've been very concerned as to what might be going on, and so I've moved out of the area to try and prevent, health problems.
The problem with cement plants burning toxic waste is very simple. Burning toxic waste is an extremely dangerous activity. It can be conducted safely, but it is an extremely dangerous activity. It needs to be conducted safely 100% of the time. You cannot do that in a facility that is not designed and operated, in my opinion, solely to burn hazardous waste. The cement industry that's burning hazardous waste perpetuates a lot of myths, and one of the myths is that everything is burned up. That's just utter nonsense. It's a lie. It doesn't burn up. First of all, the heavy metals remain. And one of the problems with cement kiln incineration is that all of the heavy metals that are in the hazardous waste that comes in are redistributed out into the environment. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me as an environmentalist, is why do we spend all this time, effort, and money to isolate hazardous waste from the environment so they won't harm you, they won't harm me, and they won't harm our children and our grandchildren, when this facility over here, because of loopholes in the EPA's law, is allowed to distribute 100% of those residuals into the environment? It doesn't make sense.